So indeed, the power of little change is very, very powerful, and it cannot be ignored. And with that spirit, I'm going to usher in part 1 of this Ideas Festival, which is going to reflect upon community activism and engagement. Through our time here in the United States, we have also had the real opportunity and privilege to offer ourselves in volunteering at various community services. And we have seen how this little effort matters a lot for social change and impact. And I'm very, very sure that the next set of panelists and moderator I'm going to call onto the stage for this next segment of the engagement will do justice to this topic, community activism and engagement. And with that, please help me to welcome Tato Dladla, who is going to moderate this section. Tato is the programs manager at Abnormal Lawyers and a human rights, focusing on human rights litigation, as well as citizen rights awareness in Zimbabwe. Tato also works with trans research education advocacy training as a paralegal, focusing on promoting access to justice for LGBTQI persons, especially trans diverse individuals. And next, we're going to have Aisha Say. Aisha is a youth network specialist at the United Nations Population Fund in Mauritania and has more than 3 years of experience in the gender, youth, and environmental fields. And then please join me in welcoming David Nilabi. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. A passionate human rights activist, advocate for youth empowerment and SDGs champion, and the first Ghanaian LGBTQI activist to speak at the United Nations. And also, let's have Pritima Mutia, the prettiest lady of the fellowship. She has more than 5 years of experience in human rights advocacy, gender education, and development in Mauritius. And then we have Vivian Tati Yande from Cameroon, with more than 6 years of experience in human rights activism. Vivian is the executive coordinator at Association des Femmes, an organization that provides emergency services to women and girls who are victims of violence, especially those living in rural areas. And then finally, we welcome our own Zulu from the Kingdom of Eswatini. He has more than 10 years of working experience as a human rights defender. Zulu is the founder and executive director of Umuham Women and Youth Foundation, which advocates for widows and orphans' rights in his kingdom. Thank you so much, and panelists and moderators, please mesmerize us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed, for introducing us and for making us look like we're, well, I don't know, amazing. Thank you. So I am Tato. I will be the panel moderator, and I think I wanted to say I will give the panelists a brief minute to sort of summarize themselves, but I think Mohammed mostly touched on that. But I think it would be nice to hear their voices, isn't it? So over to you guys.
Thank you, Tato. I am David Labi from Ghana, and I am an LGBTQI activist. Thank you.
Good morning once again. I'm Lungelo Zulu from the Kingdom of Eswatini. It's good to be here. Thank you so much.
Good morning again. I'm Pritima from Mauritius. So my areas of work include human rights advocacy, gender, education, monitoring, and evaluation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Aisha C. from Mauritania. I work in the youth empowerment field and also in the human rights and gender-based violence issues.
Good morning. My name is Vivian Tati. I'm working on advocacy for gender issues in my country. I'm also running an organization who provides emergency services for women and girls victims of violence, especially for those living in rural areas. Thank you.
So my first question to you guys will be, what type of social problems do you guys work on, and why do you think they're important? So maybe just one of you can go ahead with that.
Okay, I will start. I work around the issues that are faced by widows, in particular in the Kingdom of Eswatini, who are constantly deprived of their husband inheritance rights, who are constantly victims of land grabbing, who are also in the center of torture. They are victims of gender-based violence, and at some point in time, they also suffer from mental health. Because if I can just give you a small picture, these people, they are trying to come into a sense that they no longer have their lifetime partner, and then in that process, they're being disowned as the rightful wife of the late. They're being accused of being the ones that killed their own husband, and so they suffer a lot of stress, and that makes most of our work to be socially centered in terms of trying to help these people with mental health programs. That's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Zulu.
I work in the youth empowerment field, especially women and girls that lacks opportunities. I also work in my working area. There is like sexual and reproductive health of young girls and women, especially them who are not married. As in my community, they are not supposed to have the right to access this kind of services. And in the side, we also work on demographical issues. So family planning, education on how to plan, etc. Thank you.
Yes, I work on rural areas to set up services for women and girls who are facing violence in their communities, but also as a country coordinator of a national network of community-based organizations in my country. I also used to work in advocacy to engage institutional leaders, community leaders on gender issues, both for girls and boys in communities. In rural areas, most of the time, girls don't have the accessibility to services who can make them feel more empowered. So most of the time we offer them school fees, we pay them school fees, but also we are also offer funding for women and girls who are in vulnerable situation.
So I guess for me, one of the main issues and problems that I've been tackling is gender inequality, and this problem spans across a lot of spheres. For me, recently we've seen in Mauritius, across Africa and across the world even, that there's been an increase in the incidence as well as the intensity of violence. And violence has a lot of socioeconomic impacts. And by working in a children and women's shelter in Mauritius, which accommodates and holistically empowers gender-based violence survivors and their children, I've come to realize that early exposure to violence for children, it increases their likelihood of becoming a victim or even a perpetrator in the future. Furthermore, there's one issue about the low representation and participation of women in politics in Mauritius. Women want to participate in politics, they want to be represented, but they face a lot of socioeconomic barriers. And by providing training to women on communication skills and on how to raise funds for a campaign, it equips them to better run for the next elections.
I think for me, it is very important with the work that I do as an LGBTQI activist. I started my journey in Ghana, where I was fighting for the rights of LGBTQI persons because myself, I identify with the community, and so I know the discrimination that comes with it, and you being different in society, the struggles you have to go through every day to survive. And so I've seen many of my colleagues that I grew up in Ghana with being abused, being arrested, and sometimes I'm always at a police station bailing people. And I've experienced activists being killed because people don't agree with what they do. And not only in Ghana, because I've had a privilege to now work across the 54 countries in Africa. And for me, my focus is to empower young LGBTQI activists across the continent. And I've engaged a lot of young people in their struggles. So basically now what I do is how to get them into spaces that they don't have the access to get to, because my organization basically serves as a linkage between their country and the corridors of power. So basically we have access to certain places that they don't have, like the United Nations. So what I do is that we give them training, we build their capacity on leadership, on how to do advocacy, and so then we help them draft their reports and basically to represent, I mean, we bring in them, because we have the funding, and so we help them to come to the United Nations to put their issues on the floor so that the other UN member states will get to hear the challenges that other African countries are going through. So I think it's very important with the work I do because we see a lot, and I think that for me, one of the things I believe in, that the basis of everything is humanity. And so people have to be themselves, and it is really heartbreaking and frustrating seeing that someone will have to run out of his country, or someone will be killed, or someone will be arrested because they are different and they don't subscribe to the heteronormative society we live in.
All right, so throwing it right back to you again, David. What did you say would be the cause of the problems you address in your community? And also, do you think the work that you do sort of fully addresses those problems, or you think there's still more gaps to be looked at?
That is, yeah, there are a lot of gaps, but I think that for me, when I look at pre-colonial era, I'm going to speak from Ghana perspective, and pre-colonial era and during colonization and post-colonialism, you could see that there's a bit of difference as to how sexuality were being looked at in these eras. First of all, one of the key problems that is causing what we are seeing now is the colonial legacy laws that our countries decided to inherit after independence, but they decided not to scrap those laws, but they decided to keep it in our criminal codes. And that is one, because then we have the law being to our disadvantage. And secondly, religious fundamentalism, because we have religious groups who think that since the Bible is saying that if you're an LGBTQI person, it's against the will of God. And so I come from a country where religious groups have a very strong hold, even on our political system. We don't have a system where we have religion and there's a separation between religion and state. But we have a system where religious groups influence government even in their decision. And currently in Ghana, we are fighting a bill since 2021. There's been a bill on the floor of Parliament which is even criminalizing sympathy. So if you're in Ghana and if I tell you that I'm a gay man and you show sympathy, the bill says that you go to jail for 5 years. And so that is like, you can really see. So for me, that is the root cause. But I think our work is also very important because I had a privilege to be at the UN to speak to some of the issues that we go through as LGBTQI people in Ghana. And this create attention to other countries to know some of the dying situation, because I am a representation of the community. It's a lived experience for me. And so sharing this, they get to understand that, okay, so there are pertaining issues happening. So it's very important, but there are gaps because it's a lot of challenge. And I think that I always tell people it only gets better. Yeah.
Thank you. Aisha, you mentioned that you are advancing SR and HR rights for young women and girls. I will pose the same question to you. Why do you think this is still a problem in your country? And do you really think your work really addresses that?
Exactly. This is one of the fields I'm working on, but there are several others. I'm from a country that was based with the constitution and law. Basics were based on class, social class, race, gender, men, and religious supremacies. So what it's doing, it's caused a lot of inequalities. If you were not born in the good family, you have big chances to never achieve your goals in your life. So especially for women and girls, because as today we notice change because there is a lot of awareness, but if you're born a girl, if you're born a woman, especially if you're born a poor girl or poor woman, what is expected for you is to get married early, build family, face violence most of the time because you don't have the opportunity to escape, as you have no opportunity to be autonomous or independent, and mostly you don't have access to services. So the cause, I think, was the designing itself of the country. The cause what people that were concerned, they barely had the opportunity to sit and to raise their voice. And why what I'm doing is important, I don't know if it's important, but I do my best, is like I'm empowering them. I'm trying to empower them so they can know their right, so they can raise their voice, so they can sit at the table and say, we can't, we exist, and this is what we want. And if they are given that opportunities, I think they can achieve, they can rise, they can become something, and they can, feel that they are humans. For me, this is the main principal goal I want to achieve. And at the same time, I think everyone can be a leader if they're given the opportunity to be so. No one born a leader. It's not something that is innate to anyone, but if you are given the opportunities, you can achieve and you can raise, you can be an example for the society. And for me, these women and girls, this is what my objective are, but also boys, because when you see patriarchy, we need positive masculinity. So I also train boys and men to be better men, to tell them your role exactly is not to commend, your role is to protect your role, and tell them with words they can understand. So with that, I think we can have a better situation and a better empathy among these girls.
Zulu, you mentioned you work with widows that are mostly deprived of their inheritance and they are victims of land grabbing, and they have suffer mental health effects of that. What got you involved in that kind of work? What inspired you, and what are the approaches that you use in your work?
Okay, thank you so much. Myself, I'm from an extended family. My mother was the second wife, is the second wife, of course, because she's still alive. I lost my father when I was I was doing grade 2, and I was only 9 years old. I'm a third born in a family of 8. The last born, when my father passed away, was only 4 months old. And so we were staying in a government house. And so we had to move out of that house because my father passed away 1 May. And so June 1st, we were forced to move out of the house. Mind you, it's the middle of the year, and we were attending school within the city. And so we had to go and look for a small apartment. The first wife, in short, took everything with the help or the assistance of our own family members. And so we grew up very hard, and it was so painful because at some point in time, personally, I had to be a primary dropout for 2 years because we are 8, my mother wasn't working, and so she was, if I'm in the middle of the year, I will drop out. She was trying to get some fund to now my elder brother and my elder sister to continue with school, but one way or the other, we were able to finish school, all of us. And so I said my father was working for government. Basically, there are certain benefits that we were supposed to get legally, but then we were deprived of those inheritance right. Even the furniture that was used in our homestead, my aunt and my other family members took all those things, and so we had to start afresh. And so that's the reason that inspired me to be now to do the kind of work that I'm doing. And again, what we need to understand, these issues, they don't only affect our parents. We, the children of these widows you are talking about, we suffer the most in that process. And so that's why we also have quite a number of young people who are street kids today. Some of them are also sex workers, some of them are drug abuse, and some of them, they are homeless as we speak. And so what causes most of us to be deprived of our inheritance right? One, it is the issue that we widows in my country, they're absent in national statistics. There are no government programs, policies, legislations. There's absolutely nothing. And the law that it's governing the distribution of the estate rights, the estate, is the Act of 1902. We're using it in 2023. And so, again, we have a dual system in my country that indeed doesn't view widows and their children as ordinary citizens in the country, even at community level. The issue of land grabbing, because the issue of, we have two types of land in my country. We have the one under the Swazi nation land and the one under the municipality. And so the one under the Swazi nation land, that's where the issue of land grabbing is taking place, because it's governed by the chiefs. And so the moment your father passes away, the very same traditional authorities will allocate churches and other people the fields that you were plowing to get food and stuff. And so if your mother will say, go to the traditional leader to report this matter, our culture says a child cannot talk with the elder. And so that's where it happens. And so, in a nutshell, it's my personal experience, and the vision that we have. We are trying to call upon and to advocate for legislations and programs and policies to address the issues and the well-being of widows and their children, and also to have a proper program by government, because as an organization, we can't be everywhere in the country in terms of providing psychosocial support. And so most of the widows and their children, they can't go to special doctors to get that kind of mental support. But then if government can initiate this, it can be a national thing and it can be accessible for every citizen. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Zulu. I am grateful for sharing your experience with us. Pretima, I am going to throw the same question at you. What inspired you to work for gender equality, and what are the approaches that you use in your work?
I think growing up, I've seen as a child many instances of gender inequality in my own household. For me, there are two key emotions that drive my work. Fear and shame are very closely linked to violence. And for me, the basis of my work has been to transmute these two emotions into hope and strength. I've been following the work of Genderlings, the organization at which I currently work. So it's a Southern African women's rights organization. And I knew that with the level of advocacy and campaigning and research that they were doing, that I wanted to join the organization right after I finished my studies. This is what happened. I also think that what inspired me to join Genderlings is the kind of focus on three different levels. So there was a focus on policy changes. So advocacy campaigns to bring about changes, for instance, to bring about the Children's Act to abolish child marriage in Mauritius. There's the focus on, I would say, advocacy actions and soft measures that even as a non-governmental organization that we could take. For instance, writing alternative reports to UN bodies, liaising with members of parliaments, proposing recommendations to the finance minister for the national budget, and following research also on the perceptions and attitudes of violence that people have, on the perceptions that people have on violence against women, children, and LGBTQIA+ persons. I would say that my work seeks to address this problem by, of course, empowering gender-based violence survivors. So there's a lot of self-esteem building that's done at the shelter, but there's also on-the-job training and entrepreneurship training, because we believe that being financially independent helps. It's not the only solution, and it's not the entire solution to mitigate gender-based violence. Besides that, we conduct a lot of community grassroots sensitization sessions with different members of the community. This is because we want to ensure that there are two sides to patriarchy. There's one side where victims believe and internalize that it's okay that they are being hit, and there's the other side where the perpetrators are like, it's okay for me to hit. So we're trying to tackle both ends of patriarchy. And for us, the community sensitization sessions, they really help us get the idea out on the, and raise awareness on the types of violence, on the causes and the consequences, and on the types of small actions that you can take in your own household while bringing up children to kind of not perpetuate patriarchal beliefs and norms.
Thank you so much, Pritima, for that. So before I open up to the floor for questions, maybe would you guys give us a very brief departing words? And I know, Vivian, I was supposed to come to you, but I think we're pressed for time. I'm very sorry about that. So maybe you could start with your departing words and maybe sum it up what you would have wanted to say.
Repeat your question, please.
Just brief closings, remarks before we open to the floor.
Oh, okay. Before we open to the floor, what I want to say is community engagement is a very big need in our country. I think most of the people, most of you should be engaged in communities, even if it's not in gender equality. It can be in environment or also another area, but we need to see more youth, but we need also to engage each other in our community, especially in rural areas, because in Africa, most of the time is in rural area there are few infrastructure for youth to really express themselves, but also for young girls also to really see the way in other way than society have prepared them for this. So I think first of all I would like to thank Mandela Washington Fellowship, Presidential Precinct for this opportunity, because for me, coming from where I'm coming, my community, my family, and my history, my personal history is a big opportunity for me, and I'm really grateful for it. I really enjoy all the weeks we have been there and been part with all my fellows, and also let's engage, guys. Thank you.
Right. I'll follow Viviane by thanking everyone, thanking the Mandela Washington Fellowship, thanking again the Presidential Precinct and its partner. You guys been amazing to us, really amazing to us. We were expecting things, but we were not expecting that much. And we want you to be aware of the impact you have on our life today and forever. We want you to be aware that you change people, that you really raise leaders. Because, yeah, we were chosen to be leaders, but I think this training program helped us to better understand and to know, to be conscious of what a leader should be and what are the duties of a leader. Thank you guys, thank you everyone, and thank you to the amazing fellows. We learned a lot with each other. Thank you guys, love you.
Thank you.
Of course, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone. I think the biggest compliment I can give you all here is I would just like to say you made me think and rethink. So thank you so much. And just a last word on community engagement. For me, it's always been a collaborative effort. And I extend my support, and I want to receive your support as well when it comes to tackling some of the most challenging issues we're facing today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys are a blessing. You are so amazing. May the Almighty God bless you and your family. And to our African brothers and sisters, I do hope and believe that when we go back home, we'll continue to work together, have those action programs, because at the end of the day, our interest is one. We want to transform and give our people hope. It is just that we use different strategies and different approaches, but the end result, it's simple, it's one. And so thank you so much from Karen and to the entire leadership of our host institution. We are so much humbled, and we pray for many more years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say that the paths all of us we've taken, it's very tough, because challenging systems, it's not easy. But what I want to say is that the struggle is real, but it only gets better. And as I said in Williamsburg, it's beautiful, it's marvelous, and the future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? And I see Mohammed is really telling me for time. I am looking at the time. I still have 4 minutes. Thank you. Any more questions?
So we just have about 4 minutes for this question session. We allotted 10 minutes initially, but they have used up about 6 minutes of the 10 minutes. So we'll just take 1 or 2 questions. And then if you have questions, just indicate. She would point at you. There's a microphone behind there, so you can just use it to ask them question. And then any other person who wants to ask question or maybe pick up continuing discussion with them, we have the networking session which you can utilize for that purpose.
I have a question for David. Thank you all for sharing your stories, which are just really moving. But David, in particular, you're so optimistic, and yet in the face of such difficulties in your country that I'm aware of, how do you maintain such optimism, when it seems like almost everything is against you?
Thank you very much. That is a very good question. I think for me, I have come a long way. And I also mentioned that it is not easy. Before I was coming into the space, I knew what I was getting myself into. I was outed by the media when I was not ready to come out to the public. But then I understand the implications that comes with my work. But also, I need to recognize my privilege that as where I've gotten to now, I have the privilege that I'm being protected in terms of if anything should happen, I will be able to leave the country in just a minute, which is possible. So I still have to continue fighting. I have come a long way and I can't go back. And that is what keeps me going, because I need to use my privilege to fight for the less vulnerable in our community who don't have the access that I have. And so basically that is what keeps me going. And also, of course, as I said, the fight I'm fighting, I'm also fighting for myself. Because when LGBTQI people are liberated in Ghana, I'm also liberated. And so, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you questions, 3 of you, about gender-based violence. One of the factor of gender-based violence, we can say it's FGM, female genital mutilation. And this day, nowadays, there is some links between climate change and this practice, FGM. So how are you going to address this issue? Thank you.
Who said? You're the specialist and you're asking us to tell you how you do your work.
If I can answer, I think for us of our country is special. We don't have same context. In my country, for example, in rural areas, there's been a big sensitization around FGM in rural area. So most of the time, by this now, we are looking that there is most FGM in urban areas, which is really surprising for us, because we didn't know that in urban areas we can face FGM. We think most of the time we are going to see FGM in rural areas, but that's why most of the sensitization about FGM was in rural areas. And now, when we have found that there is much of case on FGM in urban areas, it's been due to poverty in family, but also about traditions, because family we are coming in urban areas are also looking, are also involved in their own communities, and they feel that girls must be mutilated because it's how they are growing up, is to conserve, to keep up their tradition and the norms of their communities. That's why we are trying to empower also women and girls, because in urban areas, the person who are doing FGM to girls in communities are men, not women. The most fathers of the girls who are doing it to them. So we are also trying to engage them, like Aisha was saying about positive masculinity, about how they can also take care of their girl, reach their girl, educate their girls to better, but not making them facing FGM. Yeah.
Thank you, Vivian. And thank you, Mohammed. Please don't kill us.